Okay, wonderful. I don't know if that was a minute, but let's kick it off. And a warm welcome to the last webinar web talk of the year. And we want to keep it conversational and casual because we've had a year of webinars and web meetings, and it's really hard, but I still hope we'll have a wonderful 1 hour together. So just to mention what I mentioned before, WASH United embarked on a project called Period Attacks with the support by the Innovation Fund of the Reproductive Health Supply Coalition and the New Venture Fund over the last 3 years. And the aim was to support activists and MHH practitioners to campaign successfully for period tax changes by providing them with relevant tax background knowledge, sharing experiences, and guiding them in their advocacy strategy. We developed a dedicated website, compiled a database and a map on period tax policies for every country in the world. We spoke to different activists, developed an advocacy guide, and explanatory videos, and researched the effect of tax changes on the prices. And we held several webinars prior also for the regions in French and Spanish to really share our knowledge. So with the project coming to an end, we want to reflect on the insights gained and what recommendations we can make. So we all together. To this context, we host this web talk today to discuss the status and outlook of the period tax movement around the world. So we will look at what were the successes, what were the barriers and stumbling blocks in the campaigns, what are recommendations for future campaigns, and we also look at additional policy advocacy issues. So how is the flow of today? So we're right in the welcome. Then we have a 30 to 35 minute expert discussion, and I will introduce the experts in a minute. And then we'll have about 20 minutes reflection and discussions with you. I know some of you are also part of tax campaigns or have participated, or you have questions to the experts. So please, we'll try to have this time an interactive part of the session, so it's not a one-way, and we do it very conversational. Just a bit housekeeping, please keep yourself muted and engaged in the chat box during this discussion, which will be maintained by my colleague Aya. She already introduced herself. With that, I want to launch the first poll. And these are 3 relatively straightforward questions about your professional background, if you've visited the Period Tax website before, and how useful did you find the information? I'm just counting because we're a few people. Counting down, and then I'll show you the poll. Okay, answers are coming in. Wonderful. So I'm just showing you the poll results. So it's a good mix. We even have a government representative. Most of you are advocates and campaigners, and it's a good mix. If you visited the Period Tax website also several times, yes, once. Some of you are unaware of it. That doesn't matter. Maybe now you're after it. And thanks for the very positive answers around the usefulness. Thank you. So now moving into the first round of expert discussions. And I want to introduce our experts here in alphabetical order. So the first expert I warmly welcome is Bahar Aldanmaz, by the pronouns she, her. She is currently finalizing her PhD at Boston University, researching poverty policies worldwide. And she was just telling us that she had a very highlight event, and she's in her PhD, she's just passed a very big milestone in your PhD. So congratulations. In parallel, Bahar continues her grassroots and movement building efforts towards menstrual justice in Turkey under her role as the co-founder of the We Need to Talk Association. Welcome, Bahar. She's joined by Diana Baptista, also going by the pronouns she, her, and she is a data journalist in the Context newsroom at the which is a media platform by the Thompson Reuter Foundation and based in a very warm Mexico City. Her focus is reporting on rights, gender issues, and digitalization. And she's contacted us because she's currently writing a piece on period taxes. Diana has a graduate degree in data journalism from Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. Welcome also, Diana. And last but not least, Jesselina Rana, also she, her, a menstrual health activist from Nepal. She's the co-founder of Pad2Go, a social enterprise that introduced the first sanitary pad vending machines in Nepal. Jesselina is a lawyer by profession from Harvard Law School. So very, very welcome to all three of you. And so I'm now stop sharing the screen, and we're going to start with the expert discussion. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask also the experts, feel free to use the chat box that we're going to maintain, and we're throwing this in. But I want to start with the first question, going to the activist, Jesselina. So, and for those of you who haven't seen, we've done a recent case study on Nepal. But for those of you who haven't seen it, maybe Jesselina, can you quickly share why you have started the Rato Kar Maaf Gar campaign for Nepal, what you did, and also what the results and learning were? Over to you, Jesselina.
Thank you so much, Ina. Thank you for having me here. And I think it's a very important discussion, and I'm so happy to also be connected with other people across the world conducting similar campaigns. Going to the conversation about what Rato Kar Maaf Gar is. So when we translate the campaign name, it means remove the red tax. And this was something that we initiated, Pad2Go initiated, but has been led by the youth movement and in collaboration with many other youth organizations for the past almost 3 years now. We started in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And I think it was crucial for us. It was interesting that we started it then because, obviously during 2020, we couldn't do a lot of on-ground campaigns as we wanted to. But that year actually gave us a good amount of time to build our presence online, so that in 2021 and 2022, we could actually do on-ground campaigns. So I think we looked at the positive side of the pandemic. Obviously there were a lot of drawbacks in terms of not having access to internet. Everyone was not aware as it could have been. But the idea behind it was to remove the VAT that is on the period products in Nepal currently for all period products. And this we sort of figured out after we had a South Asia conference where we were informed by both our Indian counterparts and our Maldives counterparts that tax is a conversation that is ongoing in countries across South Asia, but has been removed by 2 of 8 South Asian countries. Bhutan has been leading the way in terms of talking about tax, and even in their parliament right now. But unfortunately, in Nepal, the conversation had not happened. And when we started to analyze the Tax Act or the legislation that we have back home, we realized that there is a provision to remove the VAT for important products like contraceptives, medical supplies. So we wanted to question parliamentarians and ask them and ask the policymakers why the issue of menstrual health products were never taken into consideration when developing this exemption for the tax, or the VAT as we call it. So our campaign is still ongoing, and this is probably perhaps something we'd go on to in the later question session. But the idea behind Rato Kar Maaf Gar was essentially to remove the VAT. VAT is the final price that is paid by the consumer. and not by any other supplier or retailer in the market. So that was our focus, to make sure that the end product is affordable for the consumer themselves. And why, as I'm sure everyone else will also be discussing this, period poverty is real in Nepal, especially a country which is already hit by and plagued by poverty. Period poverty adds to menstruating individuals both mental health and physical well-being. And I think this was a concern that we wanted to address from the very beginning. We've had some successes, some failures, some challenges in the past 3 years. Our government has been extremely unstable. We've recently had our second federal level election, but even then, an acting government was in place at the time. All the lobbying that we initially did with another government, that sort of went in vain because the government changed midway. So there was a lot of procedural hurdles and bureaucratic hurdles, as I would like to call it. However, there was some form of success, as we thought, in the new budget that came out in 2022, where for the first time they addressed the issue on the cost of period products. Unfortunately, what came out as a result after analyzing the budget is that they only removed the import tax and reduced the import tax for domestic players, and removed the import tax on period products for international players. By players, I mean producers and manufacturers of pads. So the end result, or the end benefit, was not for the consumers, despite it being masked as such. So I think that is something that we need to, keep in mind, because, and I think I'm sure we'll talk about this later as well, how the media portrays what has come out of the budget to, further the agenda of certain political parties is also important. Because when the media was reporting it, as a very progressive stand by the current government of having put in place a period product provision in the budget. But when you actually go and analyze the provision, you come to realize that, well, it's not really benefiting the consumers, and it's not really what the campaign asked for. So I think even when we look at successes, we need to be critical and mindful of what exactly is happening in the foreshadow of, placating people's voices within a democratic state. So I think that's important to take into account. So that's about it for the Nepal's period campaign that we initiated in 2020, but I'm sure we're going to talk more about it as we move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesselina. Yeah, you're already kicked off. So first of all, success. Congratulations to the first steps on the success. And as you said, it's ongoing. And we'll talk about some of the barriers and hurdles, but also some of the role of the media. So I just want to, if it's okay, then talking about media, we have Diana here, who's currently writing a piece for the Thompson Reuters Foundation on period taxes worldwide, and she has researched and contacted a few of the activists and so on. So moving now from Nepal to a global view, Diana, what were your main insights and findings from your research that maybe surprised you as well?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I think the most surprising finding was this critical insight into how removing the period tax is not an end game, right? Like it is not the solution to end period poverty, which I think from the point of view from the media is kind of surprising, right? Because of how we at a global scale cover this issue. So first of all, discovering, right, that in certain countries that had been campaigning for a very long time to remove the period tax, there has been no actual impact in the economies, in the budget of women and menstruating people. And the menstrual hygiene products have not become more affordable. And looking at the data in countries, for example, as the UK, we've come to realize that prices have not only not decreased, but they have actually increased. And it's been very interesting to look at the many factors that surround the affordability of menstrual hygiene products. It's more than just a tax. It's inflation, it's the cost of raw materials, it's politics, it's how period poverty expresses itself in different countries. And so thinking beyond the period tax from the point of view of the media, I think has been one of the greatest revelations I've had during this investigation, and thinking about how the coverage has to be more extensive, more local as well. Thinking about the necessities of each country and of women in each country. It has been fascinating and definitely a lot of food for thought about how to continue not only the coverage but how activists and politicians must continue with these campaigns.
Thank you, Diana. Just a follow-up question to you quickly before I turn to Bahar. So you already pointed out that affordability has been a challenge in the success, to define the success of the campaigns. But have you seen other points of success for those campaigns that you looked at?
Definitely. I mean, it for sure starts a dialogue. And from the point of view of the media, I think issues like period poverty are perhaps hard to comprehend. And starting this dialogue in the countries has allowed media to focus on this issue and think about how we can better cover it and what are the needs of women and girls in each country. So I think, it's starting the dialogue, breaking down the taboos, start talking about menstruation, using it, in our language, where perhaps in many countries it's still a taboo, right? It's still like a dirty word. It's definitely not something you commonly see in Mexico, for example, right? Talking about menstruation and about blood, about taxes even. It's important to open up the dialogue for sure.
Thanks. And yes, that's also what we observed. But now turning to Bahar, who has a research perspective on the issue globally, but also from Turkey. So Bahar, what did your research tell you when you dived also deep into the period tax, let's say, movement and results?
Thank you, Ina. First of all, thank you for being here. I think it's very empowering to see 28 people working on this same social problem. So it gives me the motivation to continue doing research on the topic. So I will be kind of the devil's advocate, I think, in the room in terms of period tax. So my co-founder is here too. So we founded We Need to Talk Association in Turkey in 2016. And then I continue working in the same issue as a researcher in my PhD program. And I was so interested in understanding why we are obsessed with period tax, and kind of all the campaigns around the world are focusing maybe sometimes too much on the tax, and can this have a negative impact on other parts of period poverty and menstruation stigma problems. So to begin, I used the data of WASH United, and I did an historical analysis of the diffusion of this policy. Where did this policy started and where it is going, which countries adopted, when did they adopt, and which actors are in play that made this diffusion. And there is a research that got published in 2020 that showed that decreasing the VAT, decreasing the sales tax on menstrual products or exempting it doesn't change the cost. It doesn't make it more available to menstruators. So I'm like, okay, then why is this happening? And I ended up with the answer of there is an homogenization of menstrual care practices around the world. That means there is an expectation from all menstruators to use a commercial menstrual product to manage in quotes, their menstrual bleeding. So I put the perspective, I'm a sociologist, so I have a critical perspective to this homogenization. And I asked which actors benefit from this focus on products. This has been the focus of research that is showing that there's an obsession around menstrual products when it comes to menstrual activism. So in my research, I show what else menstruators ask in Turkey. We collected data from over 4,000 Turkish menstruators and asked them, what do you need? Because when we are only focusing on tax in Turkey, for example, in 2022, President Erdogan announced to decrease the tax on menstrual products from 18% to 8% suddenly with a presidential decision, although there were 4 other draft proposals that asks for different needs of menstruators, such as providing all the menstrual products freely for all menstruators, or providing menstrual leave policy to all menstruator workers. But these proposals were ignored, and Erdogan suddenly decided to decrease the tax. So the main argument around the world that kind of supports the tax campaigns says it's a gateway for further discussions, right? It said, yes, we know that this is not enough to decrease menstrual stigma, to fight against period poverty, but they say this is a gateway for further actions. And I show in countries like Turkey with authoritarian governments, this can be a dead end. I am afraid, and I can't wait to observe what's going to happen, but this might be a dead end, because then the governments will have the right to say, we did what we were supposed to do, what is expected from us, we decrease the tax or we exempt the tax. What else you're asking? Because there is, like, instead of opening more conversations, in the Turkish case, what happened is no one really approached to the members of parliament who proposed the other draft bills after Erdogan announced this decision. So I am afraid that because the tax are decreased, the tax has decreased, it might be even harder for us to push forward to focus on other axes of menstrual justice, such as, I'll just briefly summarize what Turkish menstruators told us about their needs. Okay,
Bahar, can we just stop and then I follow this up, because I like that you want to play the ones, but you do play the devil's advocate and have a bit more in-depth insights and what's happening. And I want to turn quickly after this first round of key pointers to the audience. I have a poll for you. Just wanted to understand from the audience how they agree and disagree with certain, 1 second. With a few statements. I have 3 questions for the audience. So, are period taxes period tax changes a way to make menstrual products more affordable? Period tax campaigns are a good way to help break the period taboo, and period tax campaigns are too product focused. I give us another few seconds as answers are coming in. And if you have any questions to our experts, you can type them in the chat box, or we use the 20 minutes after, like at the end, so that you can ask them as well or add to your statement. Okay, I'll give it another 5 seconds. Very, very interesting, I can already say. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I'm ending the poll, and I show you the results. And it's actually really interesting. That's what I said. You're quite divided, so across all 3 questions. So around more affordability, about affordability, there's a tendency here that tax campaigns are a good way to help the period taboo, and too product focused, also quite a tendency towards agreement. Really interesting. Thank you for doing that. So yeah, I want to dive deeper into those tensions now with all of you. So, Jesselina, do you think in Nepal it's a dead end or a gateway into doing more? I know Nepal has a quite active menstrual health scene. So, what else do you think is needed, and what else are you doing now to advance the issue?
Thank you so much, Ina. So I will thank you, Bahar and Diana, for your perspectives. I was just reflecting everything you were saying. I was trying to, put it into the Nepal perspective and think, okay, what would that mean for Nepal and how does that work? So just wanted to also respond and perhaps put in a few points there. In terms of how and whether the price of a product decreases, definitely, I don't think it's possible to talk about it in a more global perspective. I think it's very specific to each economy and how the tax system works. For example, in Nepal, there is VAT, but there's also sales tax. Campaigning for sales tax perhaps would not have made sense because that's not what the end consumers pay. VAT is what the end consumers pay on all products. And I think that's something to keep in mind while creating or while advocating for any possible tax reform. Another thing that I would also like to put out is that globally it's called the tampon tax, and that's something that we wanted to move far away from, especially in the South Asian region. It's not something that we want to put forward that using certain types of products is perhaps better, or it's still a choice of the consumer to decide what type of product, which product to use, and that's not a decision that as campaigners I think we have to make. So I think that was also our important perspective, to move away from that particular tagline. I do know that although the pink tax is meant for all other products, but it does cover at times in conversations feminine hygiene products, and we wanted to make sure our campaign is also gender neutral and not gender any specific color or terminology. So that's why we came up with Ratukar Mafkar. But moving away from that, in terms of how and what I see in the Nepali context, like Ina said, the civil society is very, very active in Nepal, and it has always been. Even during our, when we had a monarchy system, during the downfall of the monarchy, establishment of democracy, all which has happened in the past 20 years, at all times, the civil society actors have been extremely active. And that being said, the mental health sector has been very active. As Ina mentioned, the wash clubs and schools have been very active. So when we started the tax campaign in 2020, we started it at a time when conversations around menstruation was already ongoing. Even with Pad to Go, my social enterprise, where we just provide sanitary napkin vending machines on our side, we also conduct mental health campaigns in schools with students, both boys and girls, across Nepal. And when we visited these schools across Nepal, we also found out that wash clubs by different civil society actors were very active and were one of the main reasons to normalize conversations around period products. So speaking in the Nepali context, I don't think the tax campaign is the best way to talk about menstrual health, taboos and stigmas, because it is confusing to put so many concepts with each other. I do think that they need to move side by side if there is a campaign on tax in a particular country. In Nepal, I don't think the tax campaign has been the only gateway to talk about menstrual health issues. Nepal has a major and massive menstrual health problem in terms of the taboos within the Hindu society and across the region. We have extreme taboos like putting women in cow sheds, to more normalized taboos to not touching certain people, not touching certain products within the household, like not going to the kitchen. These are taboos where conversations are happening outside of the tax campaign. So I think it's important to recognize within a particular country how efforts have happened in the past and what efforts are coming very recently to complement these past efforts. And I think that's something that's been happening in Nepal. We hope that a removal of the VAT would decrease the cost of period products, but I think it is not, the question about whether it would decrease the cost of period product is not about the mathematics or the economics of it, rather the implementation in terms of the retailers. Would they be taking this extra cost now that they have as profit for themselves, or would they actually be implementing it? How do you monitor the implementation beyond, even within the capital, it's difficult to monitor from retailer to retailer. How do you monitor? Yes, you can, hold accountable certain manufacturers, but how do we hold to account every retailer? How do we factor in the cost of these period products that go on, go towards more remote areas where the cost of transportation is much higher? How do you factor that in? So we do believe, as of now, and my hypothesis could well be proven wrong if the VAT were to come out, and we hope it doesn't. But I think this is when we worked with, before we created the campaign, we did work with corporate lawyers, we did work with accountants, and this was sort of the idea that we hypothesized, that it would hopefully bring down the cost, but implementation of the cost would then be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesselina. Yeah, I liked that you said, yeah, look, you need to understand the local context for whatever you do in terms of policy advocacy, and understanding the tax system as well, and the legal framework with your background is interesting. So in turning to Diana, I'm just doing that round. Diana, when you looked at different countries, have you found good examples where there has been lobbying to ensure doing the push for retailers to keep with the tax promise? I mean, we saw now this piece coming out from the UK that retailers did exactly that. Maybe have you found some good examples in your research? And or what do you think can be the role of the media to do this once the tax change have been announced?
Thank you, Ina. I think this is a very interesting question, because without a doubt, one of the obstacles for accountability is access to data. And I think in a global scope, it is very difficult, at least from the media, to have access to data to track how prices are changing of menstrual products. And if you don't have the data, how can you keep retailers accountable? So I think, just to begin with this idea, that it would be very interesting, to start off the campaigns even thinking about how we can help media track the changes in cost, how we can have access to reliable data through time, right? And that allows us to see the changes in affordability. So that's my first thought, that we don't have access to data globally. Maybe some countries, right? But not globally. And that is a great obstacle. My second thought is that perhaps, media is very close to these campaigns during, but not after. It dies once the tax is removed or decreased and media no longer speak about it. I saw this in many countries, and I found it very worrying, because it seems like it's a win for politicians, as Bahar was saying. Once you decrease or remove the tax, then you no longer speak about it, and the conversation about period poverty dies when we know it remains, which I found that very worrying, and it's also happening globally. There are some examples. For example, Germany, even Mexico, right after the tax was removed, maybe you don't have access to data, but you can actually go to the stores and see, I for weeks or months after the tax was removed, we kept seeing the same prices. And then you start wondering, okay, what's happening? You start talking to retailers, why is the price the same? And you start holding them accountable. And definitely media can push a lot for retailers and manufacturers to start lowering the prices. And, in the long run, it's very important that this doesn't die, that we keep looking at the data that throughout the years, it can be 10 years, 5 years, even 1 year after, every anniversary that the tax has been removed is a good opportunity to look at the data, I believe, country by country, and see if retailers are lowering the prices. Definitely, I've seen in a global scale that this is not the case, that there is a lot of resistance. And we see, for example, in the UK, I mentioned it as well, there was a recent research about this. We expected them to absorb this cost, but it has actually not been that way, and consumers have not been impacted in a positive way by the removal of the tax, which is very worrying, because then what was the point of all of it? It's just political speech. It ends in the discourse, so that's my thought on that.
Thank you, Diana. Turning to Bahar, maybe again, similar question. Have you found some good examples post-campaign on driving the accountability? But also, yeah, we really want to hear as a second line from what you found in Turkey, from the needs of women, and what you think this means for period advocacy as a whole.
Yes, thank you so much. Like both Jesselina's and Diana's perspective also makes me think like differently than what I have been finding. Very helpful discussion. So me and Ilayda, I just want to say, like from the We Need to Talk, we have been requested a lot of individual donations after they decreased the tax in Turkey because of the inflation rate and the currency of the Turkish lira. So there is much more need than what were we experiencing as association before they reduced the tax. So it's definitely, for the Turkish case, things are getting worse. We don't have the data. We will hopefully collect the data and prove it with the data too, but it's definitely, there is more need from the menstruators now in Turkey. I just want to add 2 points. One is, I think for global health, policies are important. So what I'm claiming is that I'm not saying that we shouldn't do any campaigns or policy shouldn't be there to fight against period poverty or menstruation stigma, but there are 2 important things. One is how these policies are announced is very important. And in Turkey, when they announced this tax reduction, Erdogan didn't use the word menstrual products, or even hygiene. Like there was no discussion about menstrual products, even on the written documents. There was only a code of the tariff code that is referring menstrual products, and probably only tampons and pads. That's also not clear. So the goal of this decrease was never to fight with period poverty on menstruation stigma. So it's also very important to campaign for the announcement of these policies. And in none of the mass media communication in Turkey, no one mentioned this tax reduction. It's only our association and some social media accounts that have been working on this campaign with us through the way. So in Turkey, what Turkish menstruators ask is first, the tax reduction is mostly on pads and tampons, and in Turkey that's the case. And this creates a hierarchy between menstrual products and its users. So in the Turkish case, what I found is 13% of menstruators use toilet paper or cloth to provide menstrual care for themselves. And there wasn't any significant difference between high-income menstruators and low-income menstruators. So in the Turkish culture, historically, using a cloth is a part of the menstrual care practice. But when you highlight the tampon usage, when you highlight the pad usage, then you create a hierarchy and the feeling of dissonance within menstruators. They think, oh, I'm doing something wrong here by using a cloth. So I'm questioning that hierarchy, why we are putting insane emphasis on these new products, such as menstrual cup. I know it's sustainable, but we also need to listen menstruators and how they want to provide care for themselves. Second, when we focus on this tax reduction a lot, both in the media and also in our campaigns, we actually don't create enough space to talk about other menstrual experiences, such as pain. The pain is real, menstrual pain is real, and the need is real. And Turkish menstruators said, for example, some of them need to go to physical therapy to reduce their pain, but the insurance doesn't cover it. In Turkey, if you have endometriosis or PCOS and you need to use painkillers or the pill to regulate, I don't support the usage of pill to regulate, but they want to use the pill. It's not covered by the insurance. Why don't we talk about these? The insurance coverage can be a part of the campaigns, like the pain management or the management of irregularities, and we really don't talk about these. There's also fear in Turkey especially, and the fear is not only about like menstruating for the first time or whether you will be able to cover your bleeding or not. The fear is also about like when you don't bleed as regularly as you want to, then there's the fear of infertility. And we don't talk about these. Like the bleed we see on our, like wherever we are bleeding on, it has a meaning, but we don't actually talk about that meaning. The meaning is beyond the product. And I think we need to create more space for those experiences. And the third one is Turkish menstruators have a really hard time understanding what a good product means. The product and their ingredients are so hard to understand, even for an expert. Like you need to deep dive and understand what they include in those products. So I think menstrual justice movement should work more closely with consumer rights and also how to understand the ingredients of these products. So like overall, I highlighted these 3 points and show what else we can do as advocates for menstrual justice to move beyond the product.
Great. Thank you, Bahar. And that's exactly also my last question in this round to everyone. When we look at ending period poverty or achieving period equity in a bit more positive term, what policy measures and policy advocacy would you recommend? I'm turning to Jesselina also as a social business and working on this import tax VAT. So what are your recommended policy advocacy measures to make products more affordable?
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ina. So like I mentioned, I will definitely be talking more about the Nepal perspective, but always interested to hear about best practices in other countries and suggest them as part of policy making decisions in Nepal. And when it comes to affordability, I think especially Nepal had a major earthquake in 2015. Then we had the pandemic in 2020. So it's been, and obviously we have a lot of flooding in between in the years, and it's been an interesting way to, and this is something that I also wanted to bring forth, is that period care during natural calamities or pandemics become an important conversation to have, because all the policies around menstruation and the free pad campaigns that the government was leading before the pandemic or before these natural disasters hit were not able to sustain themselves during the natural disaster of the pandemic. And this is something that we found very interesting. For example, the government in 2018, 2019, in the budget that year, came out with this policy that we are going to provide free pads for students in government schools. And it was being implemented, surprisingly, because we have a federal level of government. The federal government was able, the local government and within these federal provinces was able to demand for the pre-provision in these schools. Obviously, distribution and the channels around distribution was a difficult process. And I think that's where Pat2Go sort of intervened and said that we can put up these machines and make distribution more transparent and easier, even for free pads in schools. And I think that was something very interesting, because these policies that were created before the pandemic or before the natural disaster hit was not able to sustain themselves post. And why I say that is because during the pandemic, when everyone was at home, when schools were not, open, girls or menstruating individuals who would generally be dependent on the free pads or on the pads that you get access to in schools did not have access to the same pads at home. And I think that became a cause of concern. Similarly, when policies around distribution came about during the pandemic, one of the learnings from the 2015 earthquake was that we need to put pads as part of the relief packages. And that was something that was focused on. But another issue came during the pandemic where certain industries were categorized as important or necessary industries. And the menstrual health or the manufacturing companies of pads were not categorized as that, because of which pad provision became, very difficult across the country, whether in the capital or across. And I think we also brought in this conversation with UN Women and the Ministry of Women that we need to have we need to make sure that in a country where we import pads, where we manufacture pads, there needs to be a balance even for provision of pad, because either the government needs to provide sustenance or subsidy for pad provisions, or there needs to be some balance between, the private actors and the government. And I think that is an important policy learning that I sort of found during the pandemic and post, that provisions that we have before a calamity like that hits isn't adequate to implement post the calamity and during the calamity, I think. And I think that was one of the policy recommendations that I would definitely like to move forward with, is that in the past 5 years, at least for Nepal's learning, especially has been with the earthquake and with the pandemic, that we need to have emergency responses, keeping in mind menstrual health and access to period products, whether they are pads, tampons, reusable pads. We need to have that conversation in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesselina, for your insights on that, because I think we all, also in our analysis, we said, okay, free products could be one way, but also highlighting the difficulties in that. And I also want to share that a tax is something that concerns every person who menstruates. So it goes to, like, it's it's kind of a equal tax for everyone, while those free product distribution tend to then focus on girls or on certain constitutions. There was a nice comment here about subsidies, and I'm going to launch a poll soon, but I first want to give Diana the chance to share your insights, what you, I know you're research and journalist and a lot of topics, but maybe something popped up while you research different campaigns.
Yes, I think the thing that popped up was that it's important to analyze the needs of menstruating people in each country. There's not a global perspective about needs. That's what I found. Every country, and even every municipality or every district in each country is different. So first, analyzing needs, looking through the data, who in this country doesn't have access to menstrual products and why. I found that the affordability and the obstacles change by country. It might be inflation in one country, and women and menstruating people turning to food banks because they have to choose between eating that day or having a menstrual product. But in the next country, it might be, affordability and not accessing these products might be because there are not enough competitors in the market. Because there are only 2 retailers and they're very local and they're very small, and there are not enough raw materials coming into the country, or they're very expensive. And so the prices come up, so every country and the tax system and how it works in every country actually changes affordability. So for me, that has been like the major thing. We cannot think about one single policy that's going to work for every country. Perhaps free pads in a country won't work, or free tampons, let's say, it won't work in a country that mainly uses pads or other sort of product. So it's very important to think, about the perspective and the needs of local.
Thank you for highlighting this again. And now I have a poll for all you participants to close, because I want to know from you all here, in terms of affordability to menstrual products, which policy advocacy would you recommend the most? Choose max 2 that you feel, again, as we heard, would work in your country. And scroll through there, like 10, I think we're 10 different ones, like tax removal on the sales, tax removal on the import, free products in schools, for low-income households, for targeting marginalized people, for example, in prisons, subsidies on menstrual products. That's, for example, something that happens in India also quite widely. Price caps to say max price, looking at investment incentives, promotion of sustainable products in particularly, or the implementation of product standards catering to what Bahar said, to have good quality products as well. And that. So I keep this again a bit open. And then while I keep that, I already announced, first of all, lots of thank yous for the free speakers to share your insight. I know we can talk more. We can talk inflation. We talk about the end game. We talk about the media reporting and so on. So yeah, we haven't touched much about inflation, which is a really global issue at the moment. But I want to give the floor to other participants here who have an expertise. And I think we have Fihima. Yes, Fihima. I think you're from Djibouti, if I'm not mistaken, and we've been in contact. But you feel free to unmute yourself and share your perspective in 1-2 minutes, or if you have a question. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Fahima. I'm from Djibouti, and I'm really happy to be with you. I would like to share something with the participant in here. And 2 years ago, with my team, we started to advocating mainly for taxes. We were thinking that the bad was like in Djibouti, anything that we use was really, really high. The price was really high. So we say, why not try to do some advocacy if it's working on that? And 2 years now from now on, it worked. The bill was passed last year. It's full exoneration, 0% on taxes. And we are really happy. And what I'd like to share with you is the way you can make, the advocacy. We use every woman who is I'm gonna say who is really high up for us, like who is working with the government. I'm really sorry, I'm a French speaker, so my English is not really that good. We use also MPs, all those women who work in the assembly, who are parliamentary. And what we find that if all women come together, because as you know, we need to have protection each month. It's a natural thing. So what actually struck me is how men help us. Men help us from till the president of Djibouti. They were all amazed when we told them that the tax is too much and we really need it each month. It's like necessity. Before it was just like accessory. And we told them, no, it's a necessity. We need it each month. And some girls are not going to school because they don't have paths to go to school. And that's, I think, that actually helped us. We went to school and we collect information around 593 girls. And they explained how hard was for them in the time of that month. Some of them were not coming to school for the first 3 days as the flow is really high. And it was a really good experience for us, but it was really difficult because in my country, as we are Muslim, it was really, really difficult because talking about period was really difficult for us. We've been chased, we've been cyberbullying, we received so many things, threats. But what I like is how men support us when after a year and we decide to make some, and today I'm really happy to say that from next year, from 2023, we're trying now to because our government exonerate also if you can produce parts Djibouti. So this is beautiful. Now we're trying to produce ourselves parts, but how I'm gonna say ecological one. So like they're gonna be like how I'm gonna say reusable one, washable ones. That's now our aim for 2023, and I'm really happy that because when we talk about period, we think it's only women who are engaged, but that men were really engaged when we went to them. I think mostly we just think this is our problem. If we engage more men, it was going to be really nice. But in Djibouti, from 2022 January this year ending, and the taxes are free. And we hope also now going to other things, because before there were taxes, the taxes were about 33%. Can you imagine? 33%. So we were buying like always for like $15. It was really expensive. So you had to go to a mass, brand that you don't know if the brand is really good or not, and we had a lot of difficulties. So what we proved with specialist doctors, we proved that some of those, low-key parts or low-keys, whatever, were just making more problems than if you had like reliable ones. Not always. I love always. That's what I say. I'm really sorry. I'm not doing any e-commerce brands, but I'm asking all the women who are here, please and please, if you are doing any advocacy, please contact us. We will send you all products. We will send you, all templates, because 2 years, 93 women, we did not sleep for 2 years to get those taxes out of our ways. So thank you very much for this time. I'm really sorry. I just came. I have seen 2 days ago, and today I said, "Oh my God, I miss it."
Yes.
Maybe as you recorded, maybe we can. I can watch it later. My name is Fahima. I'm a head of NGOs, 100% women initiative, based in Djibouti, and we've been helped with UNICEF Djibouti, help us a lot, and we say no more. No one's gonna pay a high price because we need it. It's a necessity to have this protection, this hygiene monthly, and no women have to face it, power and poverty and period poverty. We can face it, problem wake up, but not with. And that's the thing I wanna share with you. And thank you very much. And I will drop my Twitter. And if you wanna, if you wanna get in contact with me, thank you very much for your time.
Fahima, that's super lovely. And first of all, I'm shocked to hear how much taxes you have. And I think there you will feel an impact. And a recommendation is really look at as Diana said, look at the data before and after, really make tracking of the changes and use the media to call them out. And you raised a super important point about the men engagement, that they're really allies in doing this. So thanks for that. I know we're coming to the hour, and Jesselina has to go, unfortunately, but for those who want to stay for another 10 minutes, I want to turn to Francis as well, from Ghana. And Ghana has launched a petition as well on paths. They're fighting to have more standards. So Francis, over to you, because we're really looking forward. And thanks again, Jesselina, for your wonderful insights and for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you can hear me. My name is Francis from Ghana, and I want to just make few submissions, reiterate what my earlier colleagues said. So like I said, how do we engage young people and even men in addressing the issues of period poverty across all regions? In my thinking that I am looking at how we can holistically approach the issue and not through a gender lens. Over the past years, we've always been seeing women alone driving the conversation because they are mostly being faced by the issue. But as we speak now, we want to change that narrative where we see national issues like this as gender issue. I am a young guy, I am a boy, and I don't think these discriminatory taxes are really important. So I am leading a team in Ghana, and we've launched a petition, and the petition is actually making waves at the moment. We've started engaging policymakers on the need to scrap the taxes. It will shock and surprise you that when we were looking through those who have signed the petition, we can even identify members of parliament who have equally signed the petition. It only shows that, those in higher authorities are, first of all, having the interest to scrap it, but maybe bureaucracy and structural issues are what is really delaying the problem. But we are not relenting. We will keep pushing. We will keep pushing till we make some headway. And I want to state clearly that taxes on product, and most especially period product, are not a gender issue. And that is something that we have to be clear about. These are national issues. These are global crises that require government effort effort in addressing them. We should not just leave it like that as young people or, development practitioners, but we should see how best we can bring men especially on board. I am not menstruating, but I still don't understand why women should be taxed for menstruating, because they actually didn't opt to do that. So it's something that men are equally interested and eager to champion the cause. And we will keep applauding the females who are driving the change, and we will keep urging females to fully rally behind campaigns like this to scrap period poverty. Within few period, my personal experience is that even men are eager to drive the campaign more than women. We own the process, we drive it, we are even pushing the agenda more than female. This is not their fault. I think it is social issues and cultural norms doesn't permit people to actually have extensive and broader conversation about the subject matter. And that is actually keeping a lot of people very mute on the subject. So I will urge all of you that keep pushing and keep rooting for us, and young people will, one day we will sit down and smile because our effort has probably brought change to humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. That's so inspiring. Young men, as you said, the youth and men engaged, yeah, you will make a change in the society with your attitudes and your support. Fantastic, and congratulations to hear the success of the petitions. We know like Ghana is really strongly pushing on that. So we're at 4. So I wanted to just, if anyone has some last things to share or to conclude, has some final recommendations. Also, Bahar and Diana, feel free to jump in. Please raise your hand, and happy to have you. Doreen, and please also share which country you're from.
I'm from Ghana.
Also,
I am a WASH project officer, and one component of the WASH activity is our Blue School. We are looking at personal hygiene and menstrual hygiene in selected schools in the Upper East region. So when it comes to the menstrual hygiene aspects, we are actually looking at reusable pad, because that part of the region is noticed to be one of the poorest, and access to menstrual products is not something to come by, especially the deprived areas. So we want to actually supply reusable pad to these girls so that they can be in school. I just want to use this platform to say that if there is any NGO or any enterprise that deals with reusable pad in terms of training, if this platform can actually help me connect to such enterprise so that we can work together to improve the menstrual hygiene of these girls. Thank you.
Yeah, you have Days for Girls in Ghana. Diana is here on the call. She already dropped out. We're happy to connect you to the Ghana team. And there's 1 or 2 more companies, but yeah, you find Diana from Days for Girls here in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you.
From Globecare Foundation, you raised your hands also pretty early in the webinar, so looking forward to your contribution.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh yeah, okay. So thank you so much for having us. Thank you for putting up this webinar. So we are from Nigeria, and I want to just appreciate my brother who just spoke recently, because like he said, period is not supposed to be a gender-based issue. It affects every one of us. So we started our peer poverty outreach in 2020. And so far, we've been able to reach out to about 6,000 girls and women between then and now. But the issue is we make use of both reusable and disposable pads depending on the kind of community that we are reaching out to, if they have access to clean water. So if that community has access to clean water, what we do is we distribute the reusable ones because they are more sustainable. And for those who do not have, access to clean water, because that is also a problem here in Nigeria, and also access to water is part of period poverty. So for those who do not have that, we distribute the disposables. And also we also carried out the first research on period poverty in Nigeria. We were trying to search if something has been done, but nothing has been done. So we carried out the first one. And it will be shocking that from our research, about 315 girls, because we carried that out in a local government school in Osun State, one of the states in Nigeria. And out of all of them, the 315 of them, it wasn't a matter of who is suffering from period poverty. It was a matter of level. Because we had 80% of these girls suffering from intense period poverty, 16% suffering from average, while just 4% is suffering from low period poverty. But the point is, every single one of them had period poverty as a problem. So we initiated a nationwide period poverty outreach where we are taking each state at a time. We've done 5 states so far. We just came back from outreach last week, Saturday in Lagos State. So we are looking at trying to curb period poverty in Nigeria. And also here, the tax on sanitary pads, it was removed for just the local made pads. And we don't have much of those. Majority of the pads here are imported. So, and again, the 7.5%. So it's making very little significance, because for someone who can afford a pad of 500 naira and the VAT, somebody who can afford 460 country where over 132 million of us are living below the poverty line. So the level of period poverty in Nigeria is insane. But then it is a silent issue and nobody's doing anything about it, which is why we conducted a research, which we have published. And we hope to use it to influence policy changes in Nigeria to see if significantly a brand of a sanitary pad can be subsidized. That would be a more effective way, probably more effective than leaving tax on sanitary products. So we will be pushing for that. And also we want to carry out a movie that will address and shed more light on period poverty in Nigeria. The movie will help us raise more funds and create more awareness for people to see that period is not something to be ashamed of. What we do is we don't just share the fact, we also sensitize both the teachers, the students, boys, girls, mothers, fathers, to see how we can inclusively reduce and curb period poverty in Nigeria, and would be glad to work with organizations who have had major successes tackling period poverty in their country.
Great. Feel free, if you have the link to your report from the period poverty in Nigeria, feel free to put this here into the chat box, or share this with us so we can share this wider. We have a new, Nigeria is one of the strongest countries in terms of our MHD partners on MHD itself. And if you all work better together, so it's my call to action and coordinate, then your voice is even louder. And thanks really much for your efforts. Really commendable. I'm looking at the time. We're 10 past the hour. I really want to thank all 3 expert speakers to join us and share your insights with us. It's been really rich. I also want to thank all the additional speakers here from the ground, and to those who made really excellent comments in the chat box. Some really interesting stuff there as well. What we'll do is we're writing some key takeaways into a blog post that will be published also early next week. And we, of course, will upload and share the recordings with you including some follow-up, like the contacts and some of the links that you shared here in the chat. So thank you very much for joining. I wish you a good rest of the year. Stay healthy. I hope your country lives in peace and you'll have a good time with your friends and families, and hoping to see you in 2023 with continued passion to fight period poverty. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of the day and good rest of the year. Goodbye.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Who are you?
I'm Alfosina.
Hi, Alfosina. Okay.
Yes, my question is, I've just joined and I was a bit late. Could you just go briefly about what you are talking about, kindly?
Can you come again?
I've just said, I've just joined a few seconds ago and I have not heard anything because I'm using a smartphone, a phone. Yeah, so it was kind of difficult to join. So I was a bit earlier. Will you just go do some brief what you are talking?
So we'll send, because you registered, we'll send you a summary in a blog post, and you will also receive the recording of this webinar.
All right. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you, Jesselina. Thank you. And thanks for sharing your research. Wonderful. So again, thanks everyone, and see you next time in 2023.
All right. Goodbye. Okay.